My name is Reece Tomlinson, and today I'm going to be coaching my athlete, which is Kane Alder. He's a 19-year-old bodybuilder. He's got a competition which is 8 months away now, and today we're going to be addressing the physical aspect of his training, as we've identified in his profiling that his aims are to target hypertrophy of the hamstrings and build confidence during compound lifts, which are all stated in the goals from the client. So from further research, we've come up with the assumption that the weakness in the hamstring could be in fact to do with the biomechanics of his hip placement. So if you imagine the hips slightly tilted forward, it would put the quadriceps and the hip flexors in quite like a hypertonic position, a very dominant position, whereas the posterior side, the likes of your glutes and hamstrings, are going to be in quite a vasic or very stretched out position, which is going to make him hard to activate. And from looking at the session plan which Kane's provided me, which is of his typical leg session, there is no signs of any muscle activation exercises, especially for the hamstrings if he's having difficulties activating them. So in order to combat this weakness, we've come up with an exercise which is based around activating the hamstring itself, and it's a glute bridge using a Swiss ball, and then like using a leg curl to bring the ball in towards your glutes. So the things we need to remember whilst we're doing this is you want the ball under your heels with straight legs with your toes pointing up, and you put your arms to the side, and then if you're finding difficulties maintaining a position with your hips in the air, and you can use like external rotation of your arms, which promotes that thoracic extension. And then once we're in that set position, we're going to use the feet to pull the ball under. We're doing this because although the hamstrings predominantly cause flexion of the knee, they also support extension of the hip, so we're getting the full working movement. So now Kane's completed his set, we're just asking him how he feels about the exercise, whether he felt it's targeting the right muscle groups. To which his reply was, yeah, he feels like it's drawing his hamstrings and it feels like they're working more than they would in his typical session. And also just reinforcing the importance of keeping the hips in the air, keeping that the glutes engaged, and just keeping that thoracic extension tight. So for this exercise, we're doing 2 sets of 10 to 12 reps. We're using that sort of rep range to stay in the hypertrophy range, which is directly relatable to his sport and his goals of hypertrophy of the hamstring. It's important to remember to observe the athlete during the session as well, just to make sure he's got the correct form, and make sure he's not going to injure himself, and make sure he's completing the sets. So now Kane's finished his final set on the muscle activation exercise. We're just checking that he feels his hamstrings are in fact like primed, they are active and working, and the exercise was successful. And then going on from that, we're just clearing the area now, ready to go into the compound movements, making sure we've got a nice safe working area. Just revisiting the muscle activation exercise, if the client's finding it too easy, it can be done using one leg with the other leg and just hovering in the air, just to make it that little bit harder. Now we're going into the first compound exercise, which is the squat. On the plan, we're starting at 60 kilos, but it's important to always conversate with the athlete just to make sure that they're feeling up to that sort of standard, just to make sure there's going to be no problems with using that sort of weight, to which his reply was, yeah, that's fine starting weight. So we're going to go for 3 sets of 10 to 12 reps, keeping it in a hypertrophy range. So now I'm just giving a demonstration of how the squat should be done, and talking about our foot placement, where our toes should be pointing, the contact with the bar on the back, and also how we should be gripping the bar and keeping our elbows down. So the coaching points I'm going to be looking for throughout his set is going to be his toe positioning, the extension of the hips, like the alignment as we're going through, and also his posture throughout the movement. So as Kane's doing his set, the first thing I've noticed is that his hands are slumped over the bar. He's not used the grip that I showed in the demonstration, so we're going to have to reinforce the coaching points in terms of that. And also the speed of his squats. He's going up and down quite fast, whereas we want the descent about 3 seconds and then fast up. So now Kane's finished his set, I'm just giving another demonstration of where the hands should be on the bar, where we're supposed to be contacting, and how it's supposed to look, just to reinforce them coaching points. And in terms of a remedy to tackle the speed of which he was squatting, we're going to introduce some pause reps, where we're going to go down for 3 seconds, and at the bottom of the rep we're going to pause for 1, and then we go up. So now Kane's just getting his rest in between sets. We're aiming for approximately 45 seconds to a minute between each set, just to make sure he's getting enough rest to be able to perform the exercise, but not enough so it's not going to be worthwhile for him. Again, just making conversation with Kane, just asking how he feels, if he feels the exercise are worthwhile, because it's important to get the feedback from the client, because there's no point in them continuing with an exercise if it's not going to have any benefits to him, so it's important to get that feedback. So during the conversation, Kane has asked me why are we doing the pause reps, what's the benefits of them. So as we're pausing, the first benefit is obviously the increased time under tension in order to break the muscle fibres down. The next benefit would be as Kane pauses at the bottom of the rep, it will allow him to focus his efforts into his hamstrings contracting and activating, rather than just going through the movements quickly. So going into the second set, using the pause reps, we can already see that the rep is much slower, so it has increased that time under tension. But it's also worth pointing out that now the reps are longer, there's going to be more strain under his muscles, so fatigues is going to play a bigger part in his exercise now. So it's important for me as a coach to be ready to spot, help him out with the movement, but not necessarily jump in when I'm not needed. So now we're going into Kane's rest period, just conversating about the next exercise, which will be a stiff leg deadlift after the last set of squats. Just reinforcing some more coaching points about just keeping his head up, how it's going to force his posture, the sort of retraction of the scapula, just to make the bar nice and neat on his back, and not cause him any problems in terms of producing an injury or soreness the next day. Also asking my athlete during his rest set if he feels hydrated enough. If he's not, it's quite counterproductive to carry on training. So just making sure he's hydrated enough to carry out the session and put in a good performance. So Kane's just asked me if we're continuing with the rep range, which we are, staying in the hypertrophy range for the third set of squats, whilst continuing with the pause reps for the extra added time under tension. So after reinforcing the coaching points to do with the bar positioning, contact point, feet contact point and alignment, you can see from the squats Kane's performing now from the first set in comparison, they're a lot neater now. It looks a lot more stable with good form and good posture. So in relation to his goals, you could in fact say his confidence is boosted because he's performing these squats in a much more correct manner. So with that being the third set, it's important to remember that fatigue's going to start playing a big part of the training. He's going to be tired, and that's when things can go wrong. So as you can see, me as a coach, I'm spotting him all the way through, not necessarily taking any of the weight, just making sure I'm ready, just in case he needs me. And again, during the rest period for Kane, just asking him how he feels, making sure he's got no niggles or sore parts that may affect his performance or could later develop into an injury, which is not what we want when he's in the run up to his competition. So just conversating with Kane, he believes that an extra set would be more beneficial as he doesn't feel he's reached his maximum potential on this exercise. So we're going to add another 10 kilos of weight, but in this set we're going to be slightly rotating the toes pointing outwards, just so it's more focusing on the hamstrings. You get a deeper squat, and it's going to force them posterior muscles to come more into play rather than the dominating quads, which is experienced in his previous training. So now Kane's ready to go into his fourth set. We're just checking his toe alignment, that it's not too pointed out, we don't want it over, it's just very slightly, maybe only 5 degrees, and then just reinforcing the coaching points again, about keeping the head up, nice posture on the back, elbows down, and sort of that retracted scapula. Now, because this is Kane's fourth set on the squat, fourth and final set, and we've also added that extra weight, it's important for me as a coach to stay straight behind him, ready to spot, because fatigue's going to be playing a massive part now. We don't want an injury this close to his competition. And during the rest period now, we're just conversating, trying to get some feedback from Kane, how he felt the toe alignment was different to what he was doing before, see if it's hitting the right muscle groups or if we need to change it. But he did in fact say he was feeling the strain on his hamstrings more so than he was with his previous training, where he's had a more narrower stance, which is quite a quadricep sort of dominated squat. Yeah, so now we'll be going into the second compound exercise, which is the straight leg deadlift, which we're going to be going for 3 sets of 10 to 12 reps, staying in that hypertrophy range. At the moment we're just making sure the area is clear, removing the guards off the rack just to make sure the area is suitable to perform deadlifts. So during Kane's rest period, just letting him know how this links in with the muscle activation exercise, because there is similarities in terms of like the extension of the hip. As with the movement we're going to be predominantly using during the straight-legged deadlift, and also the stretch on the hamstrings is going to be similar. So although exercise looks totally different, we are going to be using the same muscle groups as the activation exercise, with the only difference now is we're looking to tear the fibres rather than activate them ready for exercise. So when performing the deadlift, we can use a multitude of grips for simplicity, and it's what Kane would normally use. We're just going to be using a mixed grip, so one hand goes over the bar and one goes under the bar. You want your toes slightly under the bar, just so like the first eyelet on your trainer is showing more or less right, keeping the bar nice close to your body. To initiate the movement, it's alright to bend your knees just to get the bar up, so we're not pulling our back out to taking it off the floor with straight legs. As we're up into the movement, we want to keep our lats activated, so we want to keep a nice flat back as we go down, and just lower the bar whilst keeping your legs straight, just until you feel a stretch in your hamstrings, and then you're pushing your hips back as you go down. And on the way up we're going to extend the hips forward whilst keeping that back straight and the bar close to the body. So as a coach, it's important for me to recognise that Kane understands the demonstrations, just for his safety really, make sure he's not going to injure himself. and again it's working towards that goal of improving his confidence during these compound lifts. So the first thing I've noticed towards the back end of that first set of canes was that his back started to round over, so his shoulders going forward and his head's going down. It's putting his spine in a compromising position, which can inflict an injury. So we want to correct that by keeping the back nice and flat, the scapula retracted, the lats engaged throughout the movement, just to really keep that back nice and flat and not put it in a compromising position. So throughout the next set, I'll be telling Kane to just keep his head up, because obviously your head is connected to your spine, and that forces bad posture. Once the head goes down, the shoulders start to roll over, so we want to eliminate that really. The next point I picked up on during that set was his heels are starting to lift during the movement, which is a sign that he's pushing through his toes. We don't want this, we want him pushing through his heels so it's nice and strong going through his legs, rather than putting a lot of strain on the lower back. So to correct that, I'm going to ask him to do slightly shorter reps, not go as far down, and just concentrate on pushing through the heels, keeping the bar close to his shins and up his legs rather than further away, so that's going to pull him over. Again, just to make sure Kane's getting the most out of the session, we're just asking how does the weight feel. Does he think it's too much, too little? To which his answer was he thinks it's just right at the moment, to go for another set and then see how he feels after this next set in terms of increasing or decreasing the weight. So already during this set we can see that the reps are much shallower, the bar is not going as low to the floor, which is going to stop the bar from pulling Kane over or raising up onto his toes, which is not what we want. We want him pushing through his heels to make sure he's getting the best workout on his hamstrings and glutes at the moment. Again, you can see through the reinforcement of them coaching points that he kept his lats activated throughout that workout. There was no rounding of the shoulders, his head was up, so his back was in a nice stable position throughout. So again, we're in the rest set, just asking Kane how the weight feels again, just to maximise the potential of the session. And he feels he can go heavier, so we're going to add on 20 kilos, 10 kilos either side, while staying with these short reps, so the weight's not going to start pulling him back onto his toes. We're just going to stay nice and shallow with the reps and focus on the squeeze and the stretch of the hamstrings. So again now, just reinforcing the coaching points to Kane for his following set, making sure he's pushing through his heels, his foot position is right to start with. We're looking at about shoulder width, with no more than 5 degrees either side in sort of toe alignment. And then we're going to make sure, rather than just lowering with the back, we're using that extension of the hip coming up, so you're really activating the glutes and the hamstrings at the same time. So just explain to Kane now, if we can angle the toes out a little, it might force the squeeze into the hamstrings rather than the lower back, so we're just going to try that for this following set. Now looking at this last set, which Kane's performing, you can see if you watch the feet, there's literally no lift in the heels whatsoever, and there's a bigger movement in the hips now, so you can see the hips actually going back, stretching their hamstring, then coming forward for the contraction, so it's really working at the moment. So in terms of feedback, Kane reported that he didn't previously know about the difference in toe alignment and keeping your heels on the floor, keeping them planted. He feels that helped him in terms of getting the hamstrings to work efficiently. He also reported that he hasn't previously used any sort of muscle activation exercise, but he did say he's going to try and incorporate it into his training program now to maximise results, as he felt like when he was going into the compound lifts his muscles were ready rather than cold, which is going to help him achieve his goal of improving confidence and muscle size in the hamstrings.